We live in a world that constantly teaches us to look outward for approval. From the moment we are born, we are taught to please parents, teachers, society, friends. We learn early that applause feels good, that praise brings comfort, and that validation from others gives us a sense of worth. Slowly, almost without noticing, we start shaping ourselves not for who we are, but for who we think we need to be in order to be accepted. We laugh when it's expected. We hide our fears to appear strong. We speak softly so we're not labeled too much, too loud, too opinionated, too emotional. But the truth is, no amount of external validation can ever replace the value of internal peace. The moment you stop trying to impress the world and begin the journey inward, that's when healing begins. Because healing isn't found in being loved by everyone. It's found in finally loving yourself. It's found in silence, in the quiet decision to show up for yourself, even when no one else claps for you. Especially then, so many people spend their lives performing. We wear masks and costumes that look impressive but feel suffocating. We post our happiest moments online and wait for the dopamine rush of likes and comments, mistaking that attention for connection. But deep down, we know something is off. There's an ache, a disconnection, a sense that we're living a life that doesn't really belong to us. Why? Because we're measuring our worth using someone else's ruler. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean becoming selfish. It doesn't mean pushing people away or ignoring the world around you. It means realigning with your truth. It means making space for your needs, your voice, your dreams, especially the ones you buried to make others comfortable. It means choosing authenticity over approval. You see, you are the one who has been there for you through everything. Through the sleepless nights, through the heartbreaks, through the losses no one saw and the pain you never shared. You know what you've been through. You know what it cost you to keep going. So why keep trying to convince others of your worth when you already have the receipts? When you finally turn inward and begin asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? What makes me feel alive? You begin to reclaim your power. You start discovering parts of yourself that have been silenced for years. The little voice inside you that was always there, whispering truths you were too afraid to follow. That voice gets louder. That voice becomes your compass. You stop waiting for permission. You stop shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop being afraid of being misunderstood, because now you understand yourself, and that understanding is sacred. There will always be people who don't get you, people who criticize you for changing, people who liked you better when you were quiet and small and easy to manage. Let them. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be whole, to be real, to be you. And when you begin this journey, this beautiful, sometimes painful journey of self-focus and healing, life starts to change. You begin attracting people who see you not for the role you play, but for the soul you are. You start building a life that feels aligned, not forced. Decisions become clearer. Boundaries become easier to set. And you begin to walk through the world not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. The kind that says, I know who I am, and I'm at peace with that. This kind of self-awareness, this kind of peace that's magnetic. You stop chasing, and things start flowing. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you do. You become perfectly grounded in yourself. Rooted, steady, resilient, the irony is that when you stop seeking external validation, you become more magnetic to everything you used to chase. Respect, love, success, joy. Why? Because people are drawn to authenticity. To those who shine from within, not for show, but from a place of deep, unshakable self-love. So if you're tired of pretending, of performing, of constantly trying to be enough for everyone else, try this. Turn inward. Sit with yourself, listen, heal, grow, and trust this one truth. When you focus on yourself, everything else begins to fall into place, not overnight, not without setbacks, but slowly, beautifully, and in ways you never expected. Because when you stop needing the world to validate you, you start discovering that the world was never your measuring stick to begin with. You were always enough. You just needed to see it, and now you do. We often underestimate the power of silence and solitude. In a world that constantly tells us to keep moving, keep talking, keep showing up even when we're exhausted, pausing feels like rebellion. We're taught that progress looks like noise, busyness, endless interaction. non-stop productivity. But true growth, deep, lasting, soul-anchored growth, rarely comes from chaos. It comes from the moments we sit still. It comes from silence. When you begin to silence the world around you, even briefly, you start to hear the voice within the one that's been waiting patiently beneath the surface. It's the voice that knows your truth, that has always known it. But in the rush of life, that voice often gets drowned out by the demands of others, the opinions of society, the fear of being left behind. Silence, therefore, becomes a sacred space, one where the noise of the world fades and your own wisdom rises. Self-reflection is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Just like we clean our homes and organize our closets, we must also declutter our mind. We must make time to sit with our thoughts, to question our beliefs, to ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing and who we're really doing it for. Are we living a life that's true to us? Or are we simply following a script that someone else wrote? When you begin to ask yourself these questions, you might be surprised, or even shaken, by the answers. You may discover that you've been living a version of yourself that's been shaped by fear, shaped by survival, shaped by the need to be liked, needed, accepted. But growth doesn't come from pretending. It comes from peeling back the layers gently but honestly and facing who you really are. And that kind of growth, it changes everything. There's a quiet kind of power in sitting with yourself, not to judge, not to fix, but simply to witness. To acknowledge your pain without rushing to numb it, to celebrate your progress without waiting for applause, to feel your sadness without labeling it as weakness. This is the work that transforms. This is the space where healing begins. In the stillness, you learn that you are not your mistakes. You are not your past. You are not your fears or your failures or your wounds. You are the awareness behind all of that. You are the strength that kept going. You are the courage it takes to pause, reflect, and begin again. When you honor your inner world, you start to understand your outer world with new clarity. You realize that some of the things you thought you wanted were just distractions. You see that some people who walked away were not losses. They were lessons. You learn that peace was never going to be found in someone else's approval or a perfectly curated life. Peace lives inside you, and silence is how you find your way back to it. Self-reflection also brings responsibility. Once you see your patterns, once you understand the roots of your pain, you can no longer pretend you don't know. You can no longer blame the world for everything. That realization is both humbling and liberating, because now you're not just reacting, you're choosing. You're no longer running on autopilot. You're responding from awareness. That's how you begin to take ownership of your life. But don't mistake this journey for perfection. Growth isn't linear. It's messy, emotional, and full of setbacks. There will be days when silence feels unbearable, when the things you uncover about yourself make you want to run back to the noise. Don't stay, breathe, give yourself grace. You are not broken. You are unfolding, and just like flowers don't bloom overnight, neither will you. But with each day of self-honesty, with each moment of choosing presence over distraction, you bloom a little more. And the world begins to notice. You begin to radiate a quiet confidence, not loud, not showy, but deeply rooted. People feel it. They see the change in your energy. You no longer need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks for you. You no longer cling to people or places that drain you, because you've found something deeper within. You've found yourself. From this place, you can give more authentically, love more freely, set boundaries more clearly, make decisions that align with your values, not just your fears. You begin to attract peace, not because life gets easier, but because your mind and heart become more aligned. This is what silence and self-reflection give you. Not a perfect life, but a truer one. Not the absence of challenges, but the presence of clarity. And in that clarity, everything changes. You realize that you were never truly lost. You were just disconnected. From yourself, from your truth, from your light. So when the world feels too loud, when everything seems out of control, dare to go inward, dare to be still, dare to ask yourself the questions you've been avoiding. Dare to sit in the silence long enough for the answers to rise, because they will, And when they do, you'll find that everything you were searching for, peace, purpose, power, was within you all along. And from that place of deep inner alignment, you'll see things start falling into place, not perfectly, not without effort, but with purpose and grace and the steady knowing that you are on the path home to yourself. There are moments in life when everything around you seems to fall apart. Dreams collapse, people leave, plans shatter, and the ground you once stood on feels like it's crumbling beneath you. In those moments, it's easy to think that you are broken beyond repair. It's easy to believe that the darkness will last forever. But what if I told you that the very pain that brings you to your knees can be the beginning of something profound, that you are not defined by what breaks you, but by how you choose to rebuild? We often associate strength with never falling, never hurting, never showing weakness. But real strength doesn't come from pretending to be unshaken. It comes from acknowledging your pain and choosing to rise anyway. It comes from having the courage to look at your shattered pieces, not with despair, but with determination. Because you know you're capable of becoming something even more beautiful than before. Life has a way of humbling us. It throws us challenges that seem unfair, tests that seem too hard, and moments that leave us breathless with grief. But within each of those challenges lies a choice. Will you let this define you, or will you let it refine you? You are not the things that went wrong. You are not the betrayal, the failure, the loss. You are not the diagnosis, the divorce, or the disappointment. Those are chapters, not your whole story. What defines you is how you show up after the fall. What defines you is your ability to gather your strength from the deepest parts of your soul and start again. Even when no one is watching, even when you are scared, even when you are unsure, rebuilding is not easy. It is slow. It is painful. Sometimes it feels like you're taking 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. But every time you choose not to give up, every time you choose to believe in the possibility of healing, you are doing something extraordinary. You are rewriting your narrative, and this new story, it's stronger, it's wiser, it's richer in compassion and resilience, because the ones who have been broken and have rebuilt themselves, they walk through the world differently. They carry a quiet power. They don't need to prove anything. Their strength speaks in silence. There's something sacred about someone who has known suffering, yet chooses love. Someone who has known loss, yet chooses gratitude. Someone who has been wounded, yet chooses kindness. That kind of person is a lighthouse to others, a living reminder that you can survive the storm and still shine. You see, scars are not symbols of weakness. They are proof that healing is possible. They are reminders that you faced battles and you didn't just survive, you grew, you evolved, and perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: sometimes the breaking is what leads you to the becoming. We live in a culture that worships perfection, flawless appearances, curated success, effortless happiness, but real life isn't like that. Real life is messy, unpredictable, and beautifully imperfect. Real life breaks you open, and then invites you to rebuild with intention, with authenticity, and with grace. The cracks in your story are not things to hide. They are where the light gets in. They are what make your journey relatable, human, real. And when you own those cracks, when you stop apologizing for them, you give others permission to embrace their own. Imagine how different life would be if we stopped running from our brokenness and started embracing it as part of our becoming. If we stopped hiding our scars and started seeing them as the art of our survival. If we stopped defining ourselves by the worst things that have happened to us, and instead defined ourselves by our response to them. That's the real transformation, not in avoiding pain, but in choosing how you rise after it, choosing how you rebuild, choosing how you love yourself through the process. So if today you feel broken, defeated, or lost, please know this: it's okay to feel that way. But don't stay there. Don't let that be the end of your story. Let it be the turning point. Let it be the chapter where everything changed, not because life got easier, but because you chose to become stronger. You may not control what breaks you, but you have the power to choose what you do with the pieces. Will you hide them, or will you build something beautiful with them? Your life is your canvas. And the cracks, the bruises, the pieces, they are not your ruin. They are your raw material. From them you can create a masterpiece. From them you can rebuild something honest, something real, something that speaks not of perfection, but of courage. You are not defined by what broke you. You are defined by what you chose to become after, and that choice, that power is, and always will be yours. There's a quiet kind of freedom that comes the moment you stop chasing things outside yourself. For so long, we're taught that happiness lies in pursuit, in reaching, in achieving, in acquiring. We run toward titles, relationships, praise, material success, thinking they will finally bring us the peace we crave. And yet, we find ourselves exhausted, burned out, and more disconnected than ever. That's because we were never meant to find ourselves in the chase. We were meant to find ourselves in becoming. There's a subtle but profound difference between chasing and becoming. Chasing comes from lack. It says, I'm not enough, but if I get this or that, maybe I will be. It's driven by fear, the fear of being overlooked, unloved, unseen. It's a reaction, a desperate attempt to fill the void we carry inside with something external. But becoming, that's different. Becoming is grounded. Becoming is intentional. Becoming says, I already am, and I'm simply evolving into more of who I was always meant to be. When you shift your focus from chasing to becoming, life begins to feel lighter. There's no pressure to impress, no need to perform. You're not running after people or opportunities anymore, hoping they will choose you. Instead, you are choosing yourself every single day, and in that choice, something powerful happens. What is meant for you begins to find you. Not because you chased it, but because you grew into the kind of person who naturally attracts what aligns with your truth. Chasing can be deceptive. It often disguises itself as ambition. But true ambition is not desperate. It's not frantic. It's rooted in clarity and confidence. It doesn't come from wanting to prove your worth. It comes from knowing your worth and walking in it. When you're constantly chasing, you exhaust yourself trying to control outcomes. You grip too tightly. You overthink, you compare, you doubt. And in that desperate attempt to force life to unfold a certain way, you actually close yourself off to the natural flow of things. But when you focus on becoming, you surrender that need for control. You trust the timing of your life. You trust that growth takes time, and you give yourself permission to move at your own pace. This shift is not easy. In fact, it's one of the hardest things to unlearn. We're so conditioned to believe that our value lies in how much we do, how much we produce, how quickly we get there. But becoming invites you to slow down, to sit with yourself, to ask the deeper questions. Who am I when no one's watching? What do I truly value? What kind of life do I want to build, not for approval, but for fulfillment? And the answers to those questions, they don't always come right away. They often arrive in the stillness, in the spaces you once tried to fill with constant doing. They rise gently, like whispers from your soul, and when you hear them, you can't unhear them. They call you to a different path, a path that is quieter, slower, more intentional, but infinitely more rewarding. Becoming isn't about reaching a finish line. It's not a destination. It's a way of living. A commitment to grow, to evolve, to rise every time you fall, and to keep choosing the version of yourself that feels most aligned with your truth. And the beautiful thing about this path is that it naturally repels what is not meant for you. You stop tolerating things that drain you. You stop settling for almosts. You stop explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to draw clear boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as sacred lines that protect your peace. You also begin to attract differently. You attract people who see you, not for what you do for them, but for who you are. You attract opportunities that align with your values. You attract love that feels safe, not performative. You begin to realize that you don't have to chase what is already in harmony with your becoming. This is not to say life becomes perfect. Challenges will still come, loss will still come, doubt will still visit. But when you're rooted in becoming, you face those things differently. You face them with grace, with groundedness, with the unshakable knowing that you have already survived so much, and that you are still becoming. So stop measuring your life by how fast you're moving or how much you're achieving. Measure it by how present you are, how much peace you feel, how often you are aligned with your own values, not someone else's expectations. Stop trying to be everywhere for everyone. Start being here for yourself. You don't need to prove your worth by running yourself into the ground. You don't need to hustle for love or force belonging or chase validation. You are already worthy, already whole, and the moment you start living from that place, your entire life begins to shift. You'll walk differently, not arrogantly, but confidently, not because the world gave you permission, but because you finally gave yourself permission to slow down, to listen, to become. So breathe, let go of the chase, and step into your becoming, because when you do, everything that truly belongs to you, your peace, your people, your purpose, will arrive, not because you chased it, but because you became the person it was always meant to find. Every person's journey is unique, but there's one truth that echoes across every path. Healing isn't a straight line. It doesn't come with a timeline. It's not something you check off a list. Healing is messy, unpredictable, and deeply personal. One day you might feel like you're finally over the pain, and the next, it can hit you like a wave all over again. But that doesn't mean you're not healing. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. We often think of healing as becoming who we used to be before the hurt. But real healing is not about going back, it's about becoming someone new. Someone wiser, softer, stronger. Someone who carries their pain with grace. Someone who can look at the scar and say, I survived this and I grew because of it. Sometimes the most painful moments in your life will become the most powerful chapters of your story. Not because of the pain itself, but because of who you chose to become in response to it. Pain has a way of stripping away the superficial. It breaks you open, and in that breaking, it reveals truths you never would have seen otherwise. You learn who you are, who truly stands with you, and what really matters. Healing teaches you patience. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to fix it. You learn to hold space for your own sadness without judgment, and slowly, moment by moment, day by day, the ache softens. The wounds don't disappear overnight, but they begin to sting less. The weight begins to lift. There is no shame in taking time to heal. There is no weakness in needing rest, in needing help, in needing space. The strongest people are not the ones who pretend they're fine. The strongest people are the ones who face their truth with honesty and tenderness. They don't run from their pain. They walk through it even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Healing also invites forgiveness, not just of others, but of yourself. Because often, the hardest person to forgive is the one staring back at you in the mirror. You replay your mistakes. You question your worth. You blame yourself for what you didn't know then. But healing means learning to hold your younger self with compassion. It means understanding that you were doing the best you could with what you had, even if it wasn't perfect. It's okay to outgrow who you used to be. In fact, it's necessary. Sometimes healing requires you to let go of parts of yourself that you clung to for survival. The version of you that tolerated too much, that stayed quiet to keep the peace, that accepted less than they deserved because they didn't know better. Letting go of that version doesn't mean betraying yourself. It means honoring your growth. As you heal, you'll begin to see the world differently. You'll be more intentional with your energy. You'll stop trying to force connections that no longer serve you. You'll start choosing peace over drama, depth over distraction, truth over comfort. You'll find joy in the little things again. In the sunlight on your face, in a kind word from a stranger, in the sound of your own laughter returning after a long silence. There will still be hard days. Days when old wounds resurface, days when the grief feels fresh. But those days don't mean you're back at the beginning. They are simply reminders of your humanity. And now, you have tools you didn't have before. Now, you know how to breathe through the pain. Now, you know how to sit with it without letting it define you. Healing is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about showing up for yourself even when it's hard. It's about finding moments of light in the darkness. It's about trusting that just because you can't see the full picture yet doesn't mean it's not coming together. Give yourself permission to take up space in your own healing. To say no when you need rest. To say yes when you're ready to try again. To cry when it hurts. To laugh when it doesn't. to rebuild slowly and gently in a way that feels true to you, and one day, without even realizing it, you'll look back and see how far you've come. The pain that once felt unbearable will be a part of your story, but not the whole story. You'll carry it with you, yes. But it won't control you, it won't define you, it will have shaped you, but it won't limit you. You'll be softer, not weaker, stronger, not harder, and more yourself than you've ever been, because healing doesn't make you someone new. It brings you back to who you were always meant to be, before the world told you otherwise. Before the heartbreak, before the loss, before the fear. So keep going, at your own pace, in your own way. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are healing, and that is enough. The most powerful transformation in life often happens quietly, without applause, without anyone noticing. It's not in the loud moments of success, but in the silent ones where you choose yourself, again and again. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's the most necessary act of love you can offer to your own soul. Because for too long you've been taught to put others first, to be pleasing, to be agreeable, to carry everyone's expectations on your back while silencing your own voice. But there comes a moment when you realize that you can't keep pouring from an empty cup. That if you want your life to truly be yours, you have to stop abandoning yourself to belong to others. Choosing yourself means listening to that quiet inner voice, the one that's been whispering the truth, even when you've tried to drown it out. It's the voice that tells you when you're tired, when something doesn't feel right, when it's time to walk away. You may have ignored it in the past, but it never stops speaking. And when you finally begin to honor it, you begin to return home to yourself. You start to realize that you don't need to seek approval in rooms where your authenticity isn't welcome. You stop bending yourself to fit into places that shrink you. You understand that being misunderstood by others is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their inability to meet you where you are. And instead of chasing their understanding, you begin to embrace your own clarity. This is where the shift begins. You begin to draw boundaries, not because you're bitter, but because you're healing, because you know that peace is priceless and not everyone deserves access to your energy. You begin to say no without guilt and yes without fear. You begin to make choices based on alignment, not obligation. It's not always easy. Sometimes choosing yourself means disappointing people. It means letting go of relationships that once felt safe but now feel heavy. It means standing alone for a while, walking away from comfort, and trusting that what lies ahead is worth the solitude. But with every choice that honors your truth, yourself, worth deepens. You start to build a life that feels like yours, not one shaped by fear or guilt or someone else's idea of who you should be. When you choose yourself, you start to heal parts of you that you didn't even know were hurting. The part that kept apologizing for existing, the part that stayed silent to keep the peace, the part that believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. Choosing yourself tells those parts, you matter. You deserve to be here. You are enough just as you are. You also begin to trust yourself more. You stop second guessing your choices and start honoring your intuition. You no longer seek validation for your every move because you've learned that no one else can truly understand the journey you're on. And when doubts arise, as they inevitably will, you remind yourself that you've survived before, that every time you've fallen, you've gotten back up, that you've already faced the worst and made it through. Choosing yourself also invites joy back into your life, not the loud, performative kind, but quiet, sacred joy. Joy that comes from knowing you are living in alignment with your soul. Joy that comes from waking up and feeling at peace with the person staring back at you in the mirror. Joy that doesn't depend on anyone else's presence or permission. And the beautiful irony is this: when you choose yourself, you don't lose people who truly love you. You only lose the ones who benefited from your self-neglect, the ones who needed you to stay small to feel secure, the ones who only loved the version of you that put them first, even when it cost you your happiness. And while it may hurt to let go, it clears the space for real connection, relationships where love is mutual, Respect is foundational, and your wholeness is celebrated, not feared. Life changes when you stop waiting for others to choose you, when you realize that you've always had the power to choose yourself. It changes when you stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. When you stop playing roles and start showing up as your truest self. This is your life. No one else can live it for you. No one else can make the decisions, take the risks, or follow the call that lives in your heart. So give yourself permission to be fully seen, to take up space, to want what you want without apology, to make mistakes and still be worthy, to evolve without needing to explain it to anyone. You will not always be understood, but you will be real, and that matters more. So choose yourself, not just once, but every single day, in the small decisions, in the quiet moments, in the boundaries you set and the dreams you chase. Choose yourself in the way you speak to your body, in the way you protect your energy, in the way you refuse to settle for half. Love or half, living, because when you do, something powerful happens. Your world begins to shift, not all at once, but piece by piece. You find peace where there was once chaos. You find confidence where there was once self-doubt. You find yourself, not in someone else's reflection, but in your own. And that's where everything begins to fall into place, not because life becomes perfect, but because you finally remembered who you are. And once you remember that, there's no going back, only forward, toward wholeness, toward purpose, toward a life that feels like truth. You chose yourself, and that changed everything. Here is a powerful conclusion for your speech titled "Focus on Yourself and Watch Everything Fall into Place," written in the reflective, empowering tone inspired by MUNIBA MAZARI style. So, as you walk away from this moment, this message, I hope you carry one truth with you. You are not here to chase, to please, to prove. You are here to become the most honest, most grounded, most beautifully whole version of yourself. And that journey doesn't begin with the world accepting you. It begins with you accepting yourself. When you focus on yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of deep self-respect, you begin to align your life with peace, purpose, and authenticity. The noise fades. The pressure lifts, and the things, the people, the opportunities meant for you begin to arrive, not because you begged them to stay, but because they finally found a place where truth lives. Let go of the need to be understood by everyone. Let go of the weight of trying to become who you think you're supposed to be, and instead, just become softly, courageously, in your own time, in your own way. Because when you choose yourself, when you trust your path, when you stop chasing and start becoming, everything truly does fall into place. And that, my friend, is where your real power begins.